From the Weather NorCal Command Center, this is your morning update.
Ants Meats and Grocery is much more than a grocery store. We carry a full line of quality meats, local and organic vegetables, and a large variety of fish, Green Mountain Smart Control pellet grills, and a full deli case of sandwiches and side dishes.
Well, good morning, everyone. We take a look at the latest activity coming out of the fires. Now, this is coming in from last night. So through last night, we can see the overall activity. Now, when we start to see just even the glow, that shows that the fire is burning a bit hotter than normal. So you can see we're not seeing a lot of activity here in the most recent frames early this morning, which tells us that the fires aren't as active, but they're still burning, right? They're still active. They're just not as active as they have been in the past. So you can see especially the Six Rivers complex is still burning pretty hot overnight. But then as we get here in the early morning hours, we're seeing it's just kind of slowing down a little bit here. So this just kind of tells us that, number one, either the firefighters are starting to get a bit of a handle on it, or just number two, the overall activity. I mean, and that's kind of how these fires work. They're like beasts, you know. It's like sometimes they kind of take off a little bit, they get a little angry, they kind of flare up a little bit, and then they kind of settle down a bit. And that's essentially what we're seeing here, especially with the Six Rivers complex. And you can also see a fire down here. I'm not exactly sure which one it is. There's so many. Sometimes it's hard to really pinpoint them. But you can see it too has showed signs of just kind of settling down a little bit, let's put it that way. But that doesn't mean we're not going to see these flare up again, because we most likely will, not only throughout the day, but really over the next several days. And quite honestly, with the rain that we've seen earlier this week, that did help to kind of smolder some of the fires a little bit here, but we're going to see them kind of reactivate again as things start to dry out here over the next few days. All right, so let's go ahead and take you to the weather computer and see what the satellite is detecting. Again, what we were looking at there is kind of how hot the fire is burning. Is it burning really hot? Is it not burning very hot at all? What this is detecting is just the overall heat signatures from most of the fires. Now, again, when the fires really start settling down significantly, you don't see some of those signatures. So, for example, you got the deep fire in Trinity County. You've also got the fire in Siskiyou County, not burning as hot, so as a result you're not going to see that signature. So we're seeing most of the signatures here in western Siskiyou, into Del Norte County, and then southward into parts of Humboldt County as well. So let's take a look at the fire perimeters, and you can see here all the different fire perimeters. And of course there's the deep fire, and of course we're looking up north into central Siskiyou County as well. Now, what I'm going to show you here is also the latest activity coming in from the fire. This is something we've been talking about the last few days. So when you see red on here, what that tells you is that's the most recent activity that the satellite has picked up over the last 6 hours or so. What we're seeing here with the head fire, it's not picking up on any recent or new activity, which is one of the reasons why it's not picking up on that signature. So you can kind of see the outer edge of the fire here. You've got information or data or activity that the satellite has picked up that's over a day old. But we're not seeing any recent activity that the satellite's picking up. That doesn't mean the fire is not burning. It just tells you that the fire is not as active. So, I mean, this is really a good sign when all you see are the yellows. And of course, there's the fire perimeter right there. And so what I'm doing here with the fire tracker is I'm taking the latest fire perimeter, and this is actually from late last night, about 10 o'clock last night, as a matter of fact. You can see this is the fire perimeter that we're seeing right here. So what I do is I take that latest fire perimeter, and I take that and I take a distance tool to see how far it is from each of these communities. So that's essentially what we're looking at here. It's a basic idea. It's not the exact location and the exact distance, but it gives you an idea. Really, overall, I haven't seen much change here for all of these locations, including heading southward. Scott Fire about 14.2 miles from Etna, but of course the head fire is of course a bit farther. There you can see 17.3 miles to Wairika from the head fire. Now we take you off into the U-Fish fire and the Malone fire. Same situation here. We're not really seeing much red on the map. Now again, that's going to change throughout the day. Now one of the things that I'm doing here that's new for the 24-hour channel is you can see all of these maps and that latest not only perimeter map, but also any of the latest activity that may be in there as well. That updates throughout the day. So be sure to check in on the 24-hour channel and when these maps in the slideshow pulls on through. But there you can see the U-Fish Fire, Malone Fire, both a little over 6 miles. And we take you to the Deep Fire. Once again, we're not seeing much in the way of red on the map, indicating we're seeing less activity from these fires in general. And there you can see, of course, some of the distances here. They haven't changed really much at all, if at all, over the last 24 hours. Same situation with the Deep Fire. Taking you out to Junction City, Helena, and Weaverville. Let's take you off to the north and west, and this is where we've seen some of the most change over the last 24 hours with the overall fire perimeter and some of those distances. You can see most of the activity here is where we're kind of seeing the bigger part of the fires here. But there you can see Smith River, there's a look at Crescent City, and there's a look at Hiuchi, about 9.9 miles. So let's take you where we are seeing it. And again, and when we saw that first satellite image here with the fire kind of flaring up and then it kind of dies down. So here you can see some of the most recent activity, which is mainly on the outer perimeter of the fire, which is pretty typical. And what we're seeing here is some of the distances. So Gas Key, about 2 miles from this part of the fire here. There's the perimeter there to Hiuchi. There's another perimeter. So as you kind of see, the fire does a little something like this. Still have to look for that part of the Hiuchi, 7.7 miles. That part is about 7.2 miles. All right, let's take it out of the Perch Fire. Looking at all yellows in there, indicating some older data, not as active here recently. About 2.3 miles from that latest fire perimeter. And there you can see Hoopa and Willow Creek. Again, we're looking at the Lone Fire. Not only are we seeing yellows, which indicate a day or two old, but now we're getting into the 5-6 days old. So once again, we're not seeing as much activity that the satellite is picking up on, meaning the fire is not quite as active, which again, this is something that's good. We're not seeing much change in the overall fire perimeter. It is staying on the north and even the west side, or excuse me, the east side of the Trinity River. Great to see there. Great news for Hoopa and Willow Creek. There's the Pilot Fire also. Not seeing much red on the map here, indicating we're not seeing any recent activity here, and the distances as a result are not changing with the Pilot Fire. Sulphur Fire, I may be taking this out of the mix here soon because it's getting pretty close to containment here, and it's not growing much. So it's not going to be much of a threat to these areas. This map, really, I put this one together, even though it wasn't very big. I just wanted for people who live in these communities who may have been a little concerned about, you know, the sulfur fire and its distance. But as mentioned, as if you've been following the sulfur fire, you've been seeing that the overall containment is getting much better and is becoming less and less of a threat. So again, I may be taking this out of the mix here as we go into tomorrow morning when I'm giving you the next update on these fires. Here's a look at the Lost Fire. Again, not much recent activity. You take to the east side of the fire here, and it's about 4.8 miles. Berry Glen and Oric also not seeing much change since yesterday. Let's take a look at that forecast smoke, and what we're seeing here is, of course, most of the smoke is coming in from the Six Rivers complex. And the trend that I've been seeing here over the last few days is you see a little bit of a plume of smoke. It kind of pushes to the east in the morning hours, and then that pushes to the south and retreats a little bit. Then we see another plume of smoke. We go into the evening hours. That pushes down to the south and east. It kind of shifts southward and dissipates as it does that, and then kind of retreats back. And then most likely what we'll see happen is as we go into Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, we'll see another plume of smoke push this way, and then it kind of pushes to the south. But overall, most of the smoke coming in from the Six Rivers complex really isn't heading too far from the actual fire itself. Now, that's good because we're seeing less smoke for a lot of communities. However, it's not so great for some of these areas right here, right? You start to really see a lot of that smoke. The air quality is not good as a result. All right, so we're done with the fires, at least for now. Let's take a look at what we've got going on with the forecast, right? Any chances for rain? How are those temperatures looking? So overall, we're seeing less thunderstorm activity in the forecast. That being said, I'm now beginning to see maybe another chance for thunderstorms, unfortunately, as we go into Thursday evening, Thursday night. We'll take a look at Futurecast here in a second. Cooler temperatures this week. and no major heat waves in sight. The heat is actually over the central United States, where they're seeing record-breaking temperatures. And for us, as a result, we're seeing those cooler temperatures. Now, here's your hour-by-hour forecast for the valley. It's warming up a little bit here. We're going to be in the mid-90s today. So again, temperatures are starting to warm up. We're going to see more sunshine today. You know, the remnants of Hillary, that's a thing of the past. People aren't talking about Hillary anymore. So what we're seeing here as we look at Siskiyou and Modoc, and take a look at the eastern mountains, we're still going to see some afternoon, what we call afternoon buildups. What that is when you're looking off in the distance, especially from the valley, you can see those cumulus clouds popping up in the higher elevations. This is essentially what we're going to see here for the mountains today, but I don't anticipate any showers or thunderstorms. In fact, yesterday just didn't see much activity at all. So here you can see this is going to take you up. Actually, this is actually the last 48 hours. This is all of that moisture that came in from Hillary. Remember all that moisture that came in. We saw the cloud cover the last few days, but now that low pressure that was over here is now off to the north and east of us into Idaho. So that's not having any impact on our weather at this point. And all we're just seeing here is these afternoon clouds developing. You can see them all right here just popping up in the mountains, but we've got sunny skies in the valley, but no showers. But Thursday, this is something I'm not too happy about. Looks like we are seeing some more convective thunderstorms. And what that is we still have the moisture in place, a little bit, not a ton, but a little bit of moisture. The humidity is still a little high. And we may get a weak disturbance that'll kind of push on through, along with what we call the afternoon convection. That is the daytime heat, heats the surface. That surface heat then rises back up in the upper levels of the atmosphere, which is cooler. And with that moisture in place, it condenses into clouds. And if we get enough instability, we can see these thunderstorms popping up. So it looks like there's the potential off to the west, and you can see even some activity developing off to the east in the late afternoon, early evening. That will push up to the north. Two things that I'm a little concerned about. Number one, of course, is the potential for lightning strikes in general. But number two, if this holds true, and this is the second model run that I'm seeing, that it could be pushing through right where the Six Rivers complex is, excuse me. That, number one, could mean more lightning strikes over the fire. Number two, it could also mean gusty winds, erratic winds, and that creates problems when it comes to fighting fires. But the only good that we could get out of this is if we could get a nice, dosing of rain here. But it doesn't look like it's going to stick around for very long. It'll kind of push off to the north and west. Now, in the meantime, we're seeing some development here in the evening and overnight hours off in the eastern mountains. So kind of including the chance for everyone in the mountains, including Siskiyou County, which isn't really showing much here on the map, but even Siskiyou County could see some of that activity. Now, I'm taking a look at the long range. I'm not stopping it at any particular time because after Thursday, just not seeing any development here. What we're looking at here is next Wednesday, and you saw the image here. We didn't see any more in the way of rain kind of push on through. All right, let's go ahead. This is kind of just a big area of orange. Let's kind of zoom it out here. And what I want to show you here, this is the big dome of heat over the central United States. You may have been hearing about that heat wave out over the east. And this is actually, this is a very strong ridge of high pressure. When we look at different categories, what we call the 600 decameters, for example, when you get up into that category, that means it's a very strong ridge of high pressure, and you can typically see very hot temperatures. They've been seeing some record-breaking heat over the last few days, but on either side of that, you tend to have these troughs of low pressure and cooler air. Well, that's where we are, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing those cooler temperatures. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to kind of show you that as we go through the rest of this week and into next week, that cooler air dives to the south. This heat is going to kind of come back closer to us. So our temperatures are going to kind of increase a little bit, but not by much. And the reason why it's not going to get too terribly hot and why this ridge and this heat is not building over us is because this is in place. And this is a trend that we've seen this summer. Yes, we've seen some heat waves and some big ones, but we haven't seen any prolonged major heat waves in quite a while. And the reason being is we've seen these troughs of low pressure, these pockets of cool air that have been kind of lingering around our area and over the Gulf of Alaska. And what that does is it prevents the heat from moving in. And as a result, we don't get as hot as we could. It gets hot, we all know that, but it's not getting as hot as it could. So that's why we're not seeing these prolonged heat waves, because every once in a while this will kind of back off and this kind of builds over us and we see that. But it looks like the overall long-range trend through next Wednesday is keeping that cooler air in the general vicinity and preventing that heat from moving in. So we look at the 10-day trend, and it's really quite flatlined, actually. We might see a spike here on Thursday. Some of the long-range models are indicating that by Thursday we could get up to about 100 degrees. It's not out of the question for some areas, honestly. But here you can see, basically, when we look at the whole average here for what our forecast highs are, mid-90s for the valley, give or take, depending on where you are. Now, the average high for this time of the year is typically about 97, so we'll be just below that in most cases here over the next 10 days or so. All right, so here's what it looks like today. These temperatures are in the low to mid 90s in the valley. So yeah, it's warming up a bit. Even for the mountains, we're warming up, but no showers, no thunderstorms in the forecast. But it's Thursday that we got to keep our eyes on, especially for El Turris and Susanville, where you can see a chance for some showers, maybe some thunderstorms in the evening and overnight hours, Thursday night into early Friday morning. And again, I'm including that chance for Mount Shasta, but that'll probably be even a slimmer chance, quite honestly. And then the temperature is just kind of leveling out. We're not really seeing the temperatures go up and down a whole lot. Now, when we look at the 7-day outlook for the valley, no thunderstorms in the forecast there, but what we are seeing is that little spike on Thursday. But after that, temperature is kind of leveling off in the low to mid 90s as we go to the end of the week, through the weekend, and even into early next week.